You know what's funny about Baldur's Gate 3? People constantly say Wyll is boring. Not weak, not badly acted, not badly written. Boring. And every single time I hear that, I realize people completely misunderstand what this character actually is. Because Wyll Ravengard is not a shallow character. He is a repressed character. That is a massive difference. The thing about Wyll is he's basically a classic fantasy hero. If this was a traditional RPG 15 years ago, Wyll would have probably been the main character. Noble, self-sacrificing, charismatic, protects innocent people, uses his power only to help others, believes in justice, believes in heroism. He's the good man, maybe the best of us. The problem is, Wyll Ravengard was placed in an impossible situation. That's his story. Not corruption, not revenge, not ego. An impossible situation. And the craziest part, he still tries to be good anyway. That's why I think Wyll is one of the most misunderstood characters in the entire game. Because his pain doesn't explode outward like the other companions. It folds inward. That's the key difference. Astarion's trauma is loud. Shadowheart's trauma is emotional. Karlach's trauma is explosive. And Lae'zel's trauma is aggressive. Wyll performs composure. That's why people miss it. Think about his life for a second. Wyll was raised by Duke Ravengard, a legendary figure, a war hero, a leader, a symbol of Baldur's Gate itself. And when you listen to Wyll talk throughout the game, you can hear Ravengard's influence all over him. His morality, his discipline, his sense of duty, his nobility. Wyll genuinely believes being a hero matters. Not for attention, not for glory. He actually believes helping people is the right thing to do. And that's exactly why Mizora was able to manipulate him. Because she weaponized his goodness against him. Mizora didn't tempt Wyll through greed. She trapped him through heroism. That's darker, way darker. Because Wyll made his pact when he was basically still a teenager. Young, idealistic, trying to save people. And from that moment onward, his life stopped belonging to him. What makes this situation even worse is that Wyll literally cannot fully defend himself. A lot of people overlook this. The pact prevents him from properly explaining the truth. So imagine this. You save the city. You sacrifice yourself. You lose your freedom. You lose your future. And then you can't even explain why you did it. This is a psychological torture. Wyll dissociates when meeting us. And because he can't explain himself, his relationship with his father collapsed. That's where Wyll's story gets really interesting. Because now you have two massive forces shaping his life. On one side, Duke Ravengard. Duty, honor, masculinity, nobility, discipline. And on the other side, Mizora. Manipulation, control, shame, temptation, psychological domination. Wyll is trapped between patriarchy and manipulation, between the father who raised him and the devil who owns him. That's why the Blade of Frontiers matters so much. It's not just his nickname, it's his armor. Duke, older Ravengard, taught Wyll how to be a hero. But Mizora made heroism painful. So now Wyll walks around performing strength constantly, smiling, helping people, acting noble, while internally his life is completely falling apart. And because he was raised as a hero, he doesn't allow himself to break publicly. That's why I think people misread him. They expect emotionally suffering to look dramatic. But Wyll's suffering looks controlled. And honestly, that feels real. A lot of men are taught exactly this. Do not complain, do not burden others, do not fall apart, keep performing, keep moving, keep smiling. That's Wyll. And this is why I actually think Wyll and Lae'zel are weirdly similar characters. Seriously. Both are indoctrinated. Both are loyal to higher powers. Both are trained soldiers. Both suppress vulnerability. Both are trapped inside systems bigger than themselves. The difference is presentation. Lae'zel expresses pain through aggression. Wyll expresses pain through restraint. Both characters are basically living inside identities that were trained to perform. That's why I think they're both misunderstood by the parts of the fan base, especially Wyll, because people keep waiting for him to snap. But that's not who he is. Wyll's tragedy is that he keeps trying to be good no matter how horrible the situation becomes. That's what makes him compelling. And honestly, the more I think about it, Wyll is basically Cinderella. No, seriously. He has an evil, manipulative, parental figure controlling his life. He's trapped in a magical contract. He loses his home. He hides his suffering behind kindness. And despite everything happening to him, he still stays good. That's insane. Most characters in fantasy become darker after suffering. Wyll doesn't. That's why I said earlier, he's the perfect hero placed in the worst possible situation. That's the entire character. I think people finally understand Wyll more when they actually play as him, because suddenly the pressure hits harder. The Karlach choice hits harder. The Mizora decisions hit harder. The Ravengard stuff hits harder. The Iron Throne hits harder. Everything feels more personal because now you are trapped in this performance as well. This pantomime, as he called it. You realize how exhausting it must be to constantly act heroic while your life is controlled by a devil who refuses to let you go. And Mizora is terrifying because she always has leverage. Even when you think Wyll is free, she still finds a way to hurt him. That's why the Iron Throne sequence is so important, because Mizora doesn't just attack Wyll physically, she attacks hope itself. And honestly, frustration players feel towards Mizora, that means the story worked. You are supposed to feel helpless watching Wyll deal with her. You're supposed to feel angry that she keeps controlling his life because Wyll himself feels trapped. That's the point. And at the end of the game, what makes Wyll satisfying isn't becoming edgy. It isn't becoming evil. It isn't revenge. It's endurance. Wyll's victory is that despite everything, he never stops trying to be a good man. And honestly, in a world as cynical as Baldur's Gate 3, that might actually make him one of the strongest characters in the entire game.